sign a documentation?
Yeah, I'll sign it.
Okay.
Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. On your way for the clam digger. All right,
Ready.
Mr. President, just so the council, we got 3 minutes.
okay, all right, go. I think we can forego the, under old business E, 9E, boards and commissions, and also F as well, because all these will be addressed by Mr. Shevlin and the Ferry Corporation. So we'll forego those. Okay, and the new business, 12B, discussion by council for other action on resignation of Redevelopment Agency Scott Gibbs. I'd like to thank Mr. Gibbs for his service to the community, and Tom will be able to send a letter, request to send a letter thanking him for his service.
Second.
Motion by the chair, second by Councilwoman Nato.
And
Councilor Secretary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. Discussion by council for other action on memorandum of understanding between town and North Smithfield First Student Incorporated, Mrs. Hamilton.
I gotta stay with my meeting.
First student.
This is just basically a memorandum of understanding for a student that owns the property on Comstock and also owns the property on Railroad. They're going to be switching the uses of those. I've talked to them about the national park and that being the entrance, once the bridge is done and everything is completed. There will be a beautiful entryway, and asked if they could participate by helping us, cleaning up their property a little bit. And they said at that point that they wanted to move the buses that they have, which they consider their junkyard or graveyard. I think they said they used that specifically to store the buses and then sell them. Many of them overseas. So they will be putting those buses in the Comstock area. They're going to they have a contract locally, I believe it's in Socket, I'm not sure, but they're going to be reutilizing the Railroad Street facility, housing approximately 10 to 12 buses and having them dispatch. We're going to renovate that little building and whatnot. So I asked them during the course of all this if they would be amenable to signing an agreement whereby they would be protecting the environment as much as they can. I know that there's a lot of leakage in those buses, and they were agreeing to that. So they're going to be getting pans, a specific kind of pan that will be put under each, and they're going to be paying more attention to long-term potential environmental effects on both properties. So that's what this is, just that they would agree to do the best they can. It was just a thought that we all had because of the fact that those buses have been leaking in that area for a long time.
Would they be responsible for if there's any environmental damage?
They would.
So, if I may, Mr. President, to Solicitor Guglielmi, bullet point 10, the town will dismiss with prejudice the complaint filed against first student. So that's all going to be dropped in.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, and unfortunately I didn't see this.
This is drafted by Assistant Solicitor Ashen.
Okay, so if I may, can we continue this till you get a chance to look at it, Mr. Guglielmi?
I wish I knew. I would have called. Yes, please.
Yeah, can we continue this?
I'll call Steve, Solicitor Ashen, just to make sure.
May I ask
But I mean, if he reviewed it, I'd be satisfied. If he reviewed it.
Administrator Hamilton, what zoning is the Comstock property? Is there going to be any zoning issue with the Comstock property versus the Railroad Street property?
No.
Same zone or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we can just continue, Mr. President, we can take this to the next meeting so we can get this to happen. Once Solicitor Guglielmi, that's the motion to continue it.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Zawinski to continue this till our next February meeting, was it 19th? 16th, okay. Second by Councilman Solly. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Mrs. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. Item D, discussion by council vote
You
on
don't
action.
need a motion to extend.
I'm sorry.
Motion to extend for 10 minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Solly, second by Councilman Zawinski to extend. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. Discussion by council vote on action on TIF road blockade issue. This was something that was brought to our attention, that after a title search was done, that it's not a town road. And I think, like I says, if I may ask the solicitor, would this be basically a civil matter between the owner of one property and the owner of the other property?
I think it has been for many years. I think the allegation has been that there's a paper street and that somehow the town's involved, but the law on that's pretty clear. Only if and only if the town council accepts a street that's platted, does it become the town's liability. I mean, here's the way it typically works. Typically works, let's assume a brand new plat was being installed, like a typical planning, and they put Igliozzi Way on that plan, and it's North Smithfield, it's not a town road. When that the developer wants it to be a town road, the town council accepts it if the developer builds it. That's usually the condition. So there's a state law on this as well as Supreme Court law that says any platted road is not, by being platted, a town road for that specific reason. Because town liability would ensue with regard to the construction, maintenance, and repair. And if the council's going to accept the road, they normally would look to the person who's asking them to accept it and say, are you going to build it to town standards as a condition of accepting the road? That's the way the statute's written, the way the Supreme Court has interpreted it. So the issue that's been going on, at least from what I know, I don't know the history, I know there's 2 property owners that have been involved in a court action for a number of years. Preceding city solicitors have been dealing with it. They have obviously a civil action going on, and they're fighting about ownership and access. But if the town council has 3 choices, you can accept the road and you can pay to build it. You can accept the road and say ask the person who asked you to accept the road to pay and build it. Or you can say it hasn't been accepted, and being on the paper does not incur any liability. It's a liability issue. Construction, repair, maintenance. So you have to decide. Do you want to accept the road? It's your road, you pay for it. You want to accept the road at the request of somebody else? Let them pay for it. Or as it stands now, it's just a paper road at best. There's even an argument that it's not even a paper road, but doesn't need to fight that issue, because whether it's a paper road or a platted road, it's never been accepted by the town council. That is the key. The town council either has to accept it by a vote, or it has to improve it themselves. And neither one of those things have been done under the general laws or the state Supreme Court.
Okay, one further question. So if the town does not own,
The town doesn't own the road in the mere fact that it's on a map with a...
yeah, but do we have to, if you talk about, was it Oxford and Tiff Road?
Well, I'm going by what's been discussed as Tiff Road. I don't know if it was Oxford.
Does the town also have the responsibility to plow this?
If you accept it, you will.
No, I'm just saying, is currently, do we plow to Oxford and Tiff Road?
I have no idea. My understanding is a portion of this road that's under dispute
Disagreement?
is completely unpaved and unimproved. That's my understanding. I understand this has got to do with boulders and a blockade on an unimproved portion of a paper street.
Mr. President,
But that's a matter of field.
Solicitor Igliozzi, long before you were here, there was a house on that road. It was owned by a judge, I can't remember if it's... Doris, thank you. And his son lived there.
1980s, yes.
And aerial photos show a home that was there. So, sometimes we get caught up in, we have an approved road and we have an improved road. An improved road would have bituminous and drainage and all that type of stuff, and would be accepted. The question comes, and this is, I haven't had a chance to look back into this, has been around for a long time. So if we have issued, when the town has issued a building permit decades ago to that home. In essence, did we approve the access by building and collecting taxes?
It might have just been a driveway. You approve, you're asking to go back. All I can tell you, there are no town records that show that the town council has ever accepted the road.
Oh, there are roads we have not accepted.
If you haven't accepted them,
But,
then
so
you
then
don't
we have to
to be
maintain.
responsible. Huh?
No, I'm just,
No.
but if we've issued building permits and we've collected
That's not the
taxes.
test.
Yes.
That's not the
Rankin,
test.
Rankin Path is a case in point.
I'm saying, that's not the test. The test is, has the city council accepted the road in two ways? One, by taking a vote. Two, by building the road. Those are the two ways. I'm just telling you what the law is here. You have every right. If the council feels they want to accept this road, you can vote tonight to accept the road. But understand what that means. You're then from this day forward responsible for the maintenance, repair, and construction of that road. So it's not a question if you can accept it. You can accept it, but it comes with that, under state laws, the liability associated with that road. So you have to make that decision. Or you can look to the people who ask you to accept it and say, are you willing to build it? Which is typically what councils do with anybody who asks them to accept a road. When somebody asks the city council in this state to accept a road, they say, you build it to town specifications and we'll accept it. There's tons, if not thousands of platted roads all over the state of Rhode Island that are on paper, recorded, that are not town roads. Unless and until the town council accepts them, and the person who asked them to accept them is normally the one responsible to post a bond.
That's incorrect.
Or clear the board. I'm just telling you what's done. But I'm not, it's got nothing to do with people in the audience, it's got to do with the law. The council has every right to accept this road. You have those choices. Those are your choices. I don't know what else to tell you. You certainly have a right to accept it if you want to.
I don't think that vote will come tonight. I mean, there's much more that's to be looked at. Mr. President, do you mind entertaining comment from the public? We have to take a vote to allow the public to speak. I will make the motion to entertain comment by public.
Get your seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow council members. This issue has been going on for at least 10 years as far as we've been involved fighting this issue. First of all, my name is Steve Bader, Howell Boulevard, Slatersville. And since it's just going on for over 10 years, I don't think it's something that you're going to settle within the next 10 minutes. And with all due respect to Mr. Igliosi, I don't think anyone here is asking you to make this a town-approved road. We're talking about blockage issues and other issues going on in that area because of blockage issues. Old Oxford Road and Old Tiff Road were established in about 1853. It was known as Old Oxford Highway, and was how townspeople got from one section of Burrillville to this part of the state by using that highway. My wife's grandfather was part of the crew that built that road. Since, in more recent times, that road was used by people to go up there skating. The town dump was on that road. The shooting range was on that road where my father-in-law used to qualify the police, even though it was a sandbanking down there, was the old shooting range. Judge Doris built a house for his son in the 1980s. In order to build a home, to get a building permit, you have to have town frontage on an improved street. Maybe it's not accepted by the town formally, but it was a town road with an address. This is where I disagree a little bit with Mr. Igliosi. I have copies of the building permit for that home to be built. I have copies of the building permit for this built-in swimming pool that was erected there. I also have copies of the demolition permit that Holliston used to tear it down after they purchased some of those properties. Back about 10 years ago, after some of our abutters up there, MCS Enterprises, they wanted to purchase an 8-acre parcel that my wife's family owns there. It's off of Old Tiff Road and in between Old Tiff Road and Old Oxford. That we've used that property since 1953. For the last 10 years, we have not been able to get to that property because MCS Enterprises in Holliston, they took it upon themselves saying they own the road, which is that paper road, Old Tiff Road, and they put up a set of steel gates in numerous places. And then after we tried to have our property surveyed up there, 2 weeks later, they went and put boulders the size of this desk in front of the steel gates, so we could not get access up there. So in order to get to our property, we've had to go by boat, canoe, what have you, to get to our property, which we took surveyors up there and had our property surveyed. Once we did get to our property and establish where we thought our boundaries were, we discovered that we had approximately 2.7 acres of trees that are now gone. Trees, stumps, were left with craters there. That was there, those trees were there before everything was blocked off. They did not get permission to put those gates and boulders up there from the town. They took it upon themselves, and even though we've been complaining to 3 town administrations, those gates and boulders are still there, and even though everyone says they're gonna help, we sympathize with your plight, but nothing has been done. We have had a little more done over the past couple of years. Ms. Hamilton has tried to help as much as she could, and but you can't do this alone. So nevertheless, we are in a constant struggle here, and we've been recommended to go to the town council. When we didn't ask to have this put on the agenda tonight, I would have been more prepared, but it did find its way here, and I'm glad that it did, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Also, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why those roads were blocked off. If you walk up the hill approximately 200 to 300 yards, at the crest of that hill, Old Tift, there's a road that goes from the property of Holliston into MCS Enterprises, where in 1999, the Spinellas took out, they got permission from the town zoning board in 1999 for landscaping and to help dry out area for her horses. Well, that landscaping is still going on now, 16 years later, and it now consists of a crater about 60 feet deep and several hundred yards across. And it's now identified by town engineers for the solar farm that they just put in up there now. It's now identified as a sand quarry. And the reason it's blocked off is because at the top of that hill, Holliston drives back and forth from one side of the road to the other side of the road into the hole, loads up with sand, and a lot of people, well, some, I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people are making a lot of money, and it's not the town of North Smithfield. And the town residents can no longer walk up that road for a hike or take their dogs for a walk. We have to go by boat, and it's not fair. There are givers and takers in this world, and Holliston and Spinella are takers. And they're profiting, and the town of North Smithfield has been negligent in not policing that area. There have been several variances that have been approved in that area up there, and the area does not get policed. There's apartments up there, there's tax benefits for agricultural, where hay is supposed to have been grown for the last 15 years, it has not happened, and yet they get away with everything they want to up there. We are not asking for that road to be paved, we're not asking it to be formally accepted, but we would like to be able to get to our property. I probably have more, but that's all I can think about at the moment. I didn't come prepared tonight, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, and perhaps at another date, if you'd like to take this up further, I'd be happy to get all the information from our attorney. I have maps here too, in case you'd like to see them. But evidently, some decisions were made in this town in 1999, nobody here, and there's been a lot of digging going out there that shouldn't be happening. But it just keeps going and going and going, and it's expanding on both sides of the road. Not only that, before I close, and I thank you for your cooperation and listening, the neighbors up there are very, very upset. Sick because of all the digging. Sand is blowing everywhere. It's filling up in the pond. It fills up people's screens up there, the gutters. All you hear noise. They're working at all different hours. It's not a good situation at all. We're spending thousands of dollars. We hired arborists. We get a value of everything that was taken up there. Did we see anybody digging it and taking it? No. But there's only one way to get in and out of there, unless you come by helicopter. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rocco?
Mike Rapko, 25 Old Greenville Road. I do support Stephen Bader because just recollecting, I did have friends, and John Doris was one of them, and I was in the house. And I do recollect the fact that there was, I thought, a public road right to the front of his house. The house disappeared. I think the real issue, and it came up in the Conservation Commission around 2008, where they had aerial photographs of Holliston. And I think the Conservation Commission was quite upset at that time. This was right before Don Gagnon, that there were serious issues with Holliston, and the town was not addressing those issues. And I think Stephen is right in the fact that if you block the road and you start moving gravel between the horse farm, which was a hill in front of the barn, and by state law, they were allowed to remove the hill so that the house could see the horses in the barn, but they created a pit, and I didn't realize it was 60 feet. But that's a serious issue, that you have an expansion of sand and gravel. And I don't know what the laws are, that whether Holliston is only allocated certain plats to remove gravel. You know, it sounds like there's expansion, and I guess if no one's watching what's going on with the expansion, it's not only hurting the town, but it's hurting the abutters who can't even access the property. So there's a lot of legal issues which they're trying to address, but I think there's some historical information from the Conservation Commission which would go back to 2008 or before because of aerial photographs and issues that we explained at that time, and I think we still have those same issues today. So it's a multitude of issues, so it's going to be a difficult decision as to what the council's going to do, because it sounds like it's not just blocking access, it sounds like it's expansion of sand and gravel. And, you know, what plats and which lots are allowed to remove sand and gravel. Now, maybe some of their maps will show that there is disturbances, and I think, you know, it's something that's going to take a long time to resolve. And, you know, tonight is not the time to do it, but at least to look at all the information that you have before you, that maybe you're going to have to go look at the conservation records from the last 10 years and see what the issues that were there that were brought up at the time. In addition to what Mr. Bader is talking about, and there are probably witnesses that have been in John Doris's house. There were people that knew that there was a red house that was there. I didn't realize it was removed by Holliston, but, you know, so there is a lot of testimony, so you might have to have another follow-up meeting in the next couple of months to get more input.
That's good, Mike. Mr. Rapko? Was it Paul Dupuy? Was he the?
Yeah, it was Paul Dupuy that was involved in the conservation. I think he got into the Valley Breeze, and there were aerial photographs that showed an expansion of the operation. And I guess he was quite upset that at that time, the town was not following up to at least see what was going on. So.
Solicitor, sorry, Mr. President, I just have a quick question. What happens in the case of lost records? If it was a road and the record was lost?
You have to take evidence in the council to take a vote.
Because I think you brought up an excellent point that the house would have to have frontage on County Road, at least by today's zoning laws, and, you know, 1980 wasn't all that long ago. So,
permit was issued.
right, the building permit was issued, and so
There's no town records that indicate that the council ever accepted the road.
right.
Doesn't mean.
I want that road open, and I want you guys to have access to your property. This is absolutely ridiculous, and I feel like our hands are tied unless we take control over that road. But we don't know who owns it.
Can you acknowledge that lady up there?
Go ahead.
This will be brief, I know we're running over. My name's Julia King Mayhew.
Can you come over?
Good evening, my name is Julia King Mayhew, and my father, William King, owns 75 acres abutting this property that has been destroyed. The closure of the road was done unbeknownst to none of us. So we've lost access to 75 acres. My father and grandfather have been paying taxes on this property since '45. My grandfather owned the Spinella property, plus other property on this road. When I went to look at for the property, and it was closed down, Spinella told me that I was standing on private property, which was Tiff Road, that she owned that road, plus the road was closed. So she's taking ownership of closing the road with Hollis for the removal of the sand. And if any of you went up and saw the freighter that was there, you'd be mortified on the extraction and the money that's been taken from that property. I know it's late, I know you want, I just want to know that it's not more, it's their property, it's 75 acres, and it's been an ongoing thing for 12 years. So I don't know who on the town council is abreast of any of this that's going on, the extraction and closure of the road and how it happened. Is anybody familiar with this?
Historically, I recall a gate going up and then fire department was given a
So
key.
who allowed the closure of the road?
I wasn't on the council at that time. I'm just recalling what had happened. And then there's been several movements since that time to look into it. Paul Dupuis was the conservation chairman. He did extensive amount of work. I think a history on this. This started next to St. John's Church, the original gravel operation, just expanded.
No, that has
No.
nothing to do with that.
But this is how it expanded across lot lines.
No.
Okay, I'm mistaken. Okay.
Houston's been established there for quite a while. He was closed down on extraction and more extraction, and they found another way of doing it.
Okay, then I could be off on my history.
But somebody should look at least the area of use and what's.
I think you may have misunderstood. I understand where Holliston is. I've been in there when I used to be the town planner. I believe that the extraction operation started by St. John's Church and just went across boundary lines after boundary lines after boundary lines. I could be wrong.
I don't believe so, but,
I-
we're talking about the closure of Tiff Road and
Yes.
the extensive amount of extraction of sand for them to just level the area. And I hope we get to address this again when we have more time. I know it's late.
Is it possible we could move this to the March agenda?
Is that a motion?
Yeah, to get more information from Mr. Beto and any
And so
other
everybody on
information
the
from,
council's a little bit more informed on
and
the
any
issue.
more, any more information.
Town administrator, town planner in on this to start looking at this stuff? That's your motion, I would second that.
Absolutely. That's my motion.
Thank you.
Second by Councilman Zawinski.
Yes.
Hearing none, please roll call vote, please.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Ms. Nato?
Yes.
Mr. Solly?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Mr. Boucher?
Yes. One last thing I need to, if I can have your indulgence. This item E, discussion by council of board action of Blackstone Valley Wastewater Treatment Authority. The situation with the city of Woonsocket is basically,
Did we extend it?
I'll make a motion to extend to 11 p.m. Mr. President?
motion by Councilman Zawinski, second by the chair, to extend. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This is basically legislation dealing with Blackstone Valley Wastewater Treatment Authority Act. The problem is the city of Woonsocket turned something that was supposed to be a partnership into a dictatorship. And like everything else, I want to take this to the General Assembly, and hopefully we can get a hearing on the bill, so that we can also get the PUC involved. Because currently there is no legal address to control any costs that the city of Woonsocket may make and dictate to the town of North Smithfield and other partners of the so-called wastewater treatment plant, which includes the town of Blackstone, Bellingham as well. So this is something that's been drafted by our legal counsel, and I'd like to be able to submit this to bring this to the attention of the General Assembly and have our State House delegation, Representative Newberry, and also Senator O'Neill submit on our behalf.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman
Yeah, we all
Zawinski.
seconded it.
Does everybody second that?
Yeah.
Unanimous?
Unanimous. Second. And Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Ms. Nato?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Solly? Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second by the chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now